Winning is a part of our culture. The desire to be the best, the desire to pursue excellence is a part of UVA.
Virginia has done it! The Cavaliers are national champions!
They're going to say no! They're going to say no! Virginia won the football game! Virginia! I don't believe it!
Whatever comes down the road, whatever the future holds, we need to make sure that the University of Virginia has options.
Welcome back in, Wahoo fans, for another edition of Inside Virginia Athletics with Carla Williams. I'm your host, John Freeman. We broadcast from you live today at the McHugh Center. And we are back for another recording of an episode with Dr. Carla Williams, who joins us today. Carla, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a fun, exciting time.
And we are sandwiching a very special player at the University of Virginia and a very impactful executive and coach in college basketball and in pro basketball. And UVA basketball known for not only producing great players, but producing great coaches. We got Dawn Staley, who's won 3 national championships as a coach. Rick Carlisle of the Indiana Pacers, goes all the way to the NBA Finals. Monica Wright, now a GM in the WNBA. And this woman with us is right up there with those elite coaches because she is the first female assistant coach to coach in the NBA Finals. And she did so just a couple months ago. That is Jenny Boucek, who joins us, UVA alum. How are we doing?
Great. It is great to be back.
Yeah. Welcome back into Charlottesville. And I'm sitting next to 2 trailblazers. So Carla, trailblazer in college sports administration, and Jenny, you in coaching. So how did your paths first cross here at UVA?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm a women's basketball fan. So I was aware of all of those great teams at UVA, Debbie Ryan, all the players she recruited, including Jenny that played here, because there have been great players at Virginia for a very long time. I know a lot of people think of those early 90s teams, and those were special, but there have been players here before that, after that, so a rich history. So once I got the job, we met and started talking, and of course very proud to see her coaching in the NBA. First with Dallas is the first time I came to know you, and then with the Pacers. Pretty special, pretty awesome to see and watch. And I don't know why she always ends up being the enforcer. Like whenever there's like a fight or a scuffle on the court, we always see you out there, like trying to get it
I think
diffused.
Probably, playing here in North Carolina, all our battles with them, I was always having to protect Wendy Palmer. That's where it all started. All those Carolina battles.
Yeah, well, I noticed they let you do it too. No one's jumping in the way.
I figure they're not going to hit a woman, are they?
They better not.
No, my mama instincts kick in, I think.
I was telling Jenny this is a really neat moment for me too, because I used to go watch her play when I was a kid, walking across the train tracks and those amazing teams that you had. There was a season where Jenny and her team did not lose a single ACC game, which is incredible. And then the season before that, you only lost 1. So you guys, as Carla said, we're pretty darn good back in the day. Now, Jenny, you're part of the Indiana Pacers, which is quickly becoming a haven for Wahoo. So alum Rick Carlisle is the coach. He comes back here to Charlottesville all the time. You're one of his assistants. You recently hired UVA alum, former longtime men's assistant Johnny Carpenter. You just signed Jay Huff, another UVA alum. So what is it about UVA grads that make them so valuable in your line of work?
Well, I think it's a relational business, so first off, there's that. Rick, I think, has learned over the years, like a lot of coaches learn, that talent on your staff is very important, but loyalty is as important or more, and maybe on the pro level even more because our seats are so hot all the time. So I think he, over the years, has prioritized historical relationships that he has, loyalty, and I think UVA is always going to produce good thinkers, which Rick is very attracted to. He wants problem solvers, and he wants innovators, and he wants people who are always thinking outside the box and have the capacity to think. And I think UVA breeds that. It's not just rote learning here. It's innovators. It's creativity. It's learning how to think in a different way. And so I think he's attracted to that as well.
Now, our topic today is women in sports. You guys are both trailblazers in your fields. What are some examples of headwinds that you've encountered in being a woman securing a job that has historically been exclusively held by men? And that applies to both of you.
So, I'll start. There are a lot. And I think that whether it's in coaching or athletic administration or any other aspect of sport, there are challenges, there are hurdles, but they don't. I think women's basketball players are actually a little bit different in that we have always felt like we belonged, always felt like we were up for the task no matter what. In fact, there was a recruit here today for women's basketball that we talked about that exact thing, how important being a women's basketball player in this environment is for the rest of their career, the rest of their lives. So we face them. I don't linger on them. I acknowledge them and just keep moving because I know that me being in this position, Jenny being in her position, while it may be difficult for us at times, it's giving younger women, girls, hope that they can do the same thing also.
Yeah, and I think there are obviously challenges. Some of them are in your face, some of them are subtle. It's a competitive business, and both of our particular roles have been dominated by men since the beginning of time, and so you bring in another talent pool that's competing for some of those jobs. A lot of the landmines I've found are peers perceiving me as a competitor, and learning how to navigate that with humility and strategically, and turning a blind eye, although you see it, you feel it, but knowing not to pick every battle and lose the war, but keep the war in sight, I think is very important, because you're gonna have to endure a lot of things for the greater good, and to build up street credibility and show that you deserve to be there. The microscope is on us when you are one of the few or the only of whatever you do. The microscope is on you, so that in some ways is pressure, but it's also an opportunity, because if we can do a good job and we can represent ourselves in a certain way, we can hopefully start to move the needle and change paradigms little by little by little.
Yeah, and both of you are the first at something. As I said, Jenny, you're the first NBA assistant coach to coach in an NBA final. Carla, you're the first African-American female athletic director at a power conference school. Do either of you feel an added pressure in being the first in your field, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, I do. And I wouldn't be being honest if I didn't acknowledge that. But I like something that another Wahoo said a few years ago, Dawn Staley, about being the first, being a trailblazer. And she said that it is both a blessing and a burden, because it's naturally a blessing to have the opportunity to do what we do, to do what we get to do. But it is a little bit of a burden too, because you're under the microscope, and there are pressures to succeed, because if you don't, then maybe others won't get the same opportunity. So a little bit of a blessing, a little bit of a burden, but overall it's a responsibility, I think, that we have, because we've been blessed with the opportunity.
Yeah, and I think some of the pressure comes from the fact that the reality, and I know we accept that reality, is the margin for error is much smaller. And I'm defensive coordinator for the Pacers the last 2 years, so I have a lot of decisions to make. And if we would lose games, especially last year before some of the trust and respect was built up, it was always because a woman should not be coaching. As soon as we lose a game, and especially if we had a bad defensive game, it was not just, oh, they had a bad defensive game. It was, this is why women should not be coaching men's sports. And it was taken to these extreme statements, which was revealing underlying biases. And men don't have to deal with that. If they're losing the game, no one's even paying attention who the defensive coordinator is. But on the flip side of that, it's an opportunity, because as we build up, like I said, some success, and We show that we are competent. I also think that spotlight gives an opportunity for people to see that where we are different can also be an advantage. And it can highlight some advantages of different types of diversity that people need to be educated about. You know, people are not hiring people in the positions that you and I are in as a favor or a politically correct check the box. Too much is at stake for what Carla is doing. Too much is at stake for Rick and our organization for the role that I'm in. And so we're not getting given these jobs for some of the reasons people think that we are. And so hopefully we use those as opportunities to leverage and educate people, and hopefully Rick and people have the language around where there might even be advantages for our differences.
When you hear those unfair critiques, incorrect critiques, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I'm thankful because very much like you, my college coach was very influential in who I am today, and so I have very thick skin because of my college experience and what Coach Landers poured into me to help me get to where I am today. So I don't really dwell on any negativity. You know, I focus on the positive, and I keep my eye on where we're going and what we're trying to accomplish. And I don't spend any time really focusing on negativity or unfair criticism.
I think you got to just expect it, and in some ways embrace it. And like Carla's saying, keep your focus on your purpose, your why. If I'm ever feeling, hit in the gut by something that happens or that is said, I just look into the eyes of my players who are relying on me, Rick who's relying on me, and it centers me as to, okay, I gotta get myself together. I gotta pick myself up off of that blow that I just got, because they're depending on me, and I've got a role to play here, and so I'm motivated by their trust and the opportunity to be in the trenches with them.
And I'll just say that's why women's sports are really important, because you learn all those skills, or you start to hone those skills. I'll bet you here at Virginia, when you were a student athlete, you learn how to get up when you've been knocked down. You learn how to persevere. You learn to fight through adversity. Like all of those, the skills that men and women learn through sports participation help us later in life. That's the value of sports, one of the values of sports.
Over the course of both of your careers, is the conversation changing? Do you feel more respect being given? And are things improving exponentially, slowly? You tell me, where are we on the spectrum of pushing the needle to where it needs to be?
I'd say from an athletic administration standpoint, it's definitely progressing. I mean, it's getting better because there are more women in leadership positions. So it's not so much an anomaly, but it's becoming a part of the industry. And the women that have chosen to go into fields where there will be hurdles, there will be challenges, because there aren't that many women in that profession, kind of know what they're getting into. Like we know it, and we are choosing that path. And for me, what I've seen is just a ton of resilience. I think most of the women who are Power 4 athletic directors have either a PhD or a law degree. I mean, so we have overcompensated, for the opportunity, and we work really, really hard at our craft, because we want to express gratitude for what we have, but we also want to do really well, like I said last time or earlier, for those women coming behind us, so that they have opportunities as well. But I see it getting better. I see it progressing, and I think the numbers bear that out.
Yeah, we're moving slow in the NBA, if I'm being honest. I'm the only woman on the front of the bench, and there's the numbers have actually been decreasing. We were up to about 11 female coaches, and then now we're down to, I think, 4. And so we're very much in the front lines of it right now, I think, in the NBA, to show and spotlight that there's a different value that comes from being a woman, having a woman on your staff, on your leadership team. So again, that's where the pressure comes in. I hope that I can be somebody that people look around and say, okay, look what's happened there with Indiana. Look how much Rick and the players trust her. Is there a talent pool that I'm not considering on my staff? And why is she valued so much there? And should I be considering that value on my staff? I think we're still very much in the front end of that.
Every once in a while, you hear the name Dawn Staley linked potentially to an NBA job. Jenny, you certainly would be qualified for a head coaching position in the NBA. Do you feel like that's something that we're close to, a female coaching an NBA team or a power conference men's basketball team? And then the second part of that question is it that even an acceptable measurement of progress, or is there a different barrier ceiling that would show progress in women advancing in sports?
I'll let you take it.
I have no idea, because I think people perceive hiring a female to be a head coach of an NBA team as a risk. I have no idea why it's perceived as a risk. I see some of the people getting hired in the NBA, and I look at their background and their experiences and their credentials, and you can see women that it's like, wait, why is that less of a risk in your mind? But it's simply because of the gender. And so it's going to take just one person to think that that's a good thing and to take the perceived risk and hopefully, look like the most brilliant person in the world by taking that risk. But it only takes one, but you just don't know if and when that's going to happen.
Yeah, I'd say from an administrative standpoint, in 2017, it took a few years before there was a second black female athletic director. And I think we're at 7 now in the Power 4. But there are a ton of women who are deputy athletic directors. So they're in the chair just below the athletic director's position. And we have one here, Armani Dawkins. And so I do feel hopeful for collegiate athletics moving forward because of the pipeline. And I think that speaks to what you're saying. There is no pipeline, and it's reduced, actually, that's sad to hear. But I am hopeful in collegiate athletics because there are so many very, very talented women who are now positioned to be considered for athletic director. Now, presidents and chancellors still have to say yes to that, but there are more than enough qualified women out there to be athletic directors.
Let's talk about women's basketball as a sport, the health of it. You were both incredibly successful women's basketball players, Carla at Georgia, Jenny here at UVA. When it comes to women's basketball, both collegiate and professional, you spent time in the WNBA. What metric are you looking at of gauging the progress of the sport in the next decade? Is it attendance? Is it pay equity for professionals, the size of the media deals, something else? What can we look at to measure the progress of women's basketball, as it seems, at least from an outside perspective, to have accelerated in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I'm very curious to hear your take on it. I think a lot of the things that are important in the WNBA trickle to college women's basketball. So we feed off of the progress in the WNBA. So the viewership is important, ticket sales, sponsorships, all of that is important. Representation is important. An exciting brand of basketball is important, and we definitely see that in the WNBA. I think all of those things, because they are the same measurements we use for any sport at the collegiate level, all of those things are important. And Yeah, I have really enjoyed watching the WNBA grow and progress over the last few years, and I mean, it gives me great joy when I'm, just, watching a game on television and the arena's packed. I mean, that just would not have been the case a few years ago. And they've worked really hard as a league to get the attendance up. But I think it all feeds together because when you scan the crowd, there is everyone. Like, so many people enjoy, women's sports. And I think there's a T-shirt I saw recently out, it says everyone watches women's sports, which is so true. And it's not just women's basketball, it's volleyball, it's softball. Our Olympic swimmers have brought a lot of notoriety here. Our meets are packed. So I think that is a measurement, but I also recognize the fact that our industry is changing and it's becoming more professionalized, like the WNBA. So I feel like, both of us are going to feed off of each other, and I think the growth will continue.
Well, I mean, Carla's a businesswoman. She's expert in all of these metrics and stuff like that. That's never been of interest to me. Obviously, the players are fighting right now, not for equal pay in the WNBA, but they're more interested in the revenue share percentage, which is really different than what the NBA guys get. And so they're in the middle of, they're going to have a very interesting collective bargaining agreement and negotiation coming up. But what I look at, so Sue Bird's a good friend of mine, and we just philosophize about life and basketball a lot. She's a really bright mind. When the WNBA, when women's basketball, but WNBA in particular, stops being the brunt of jokes on sitcoms and sports talk radio and kind of gets to the point where it's somewhat cool, and even not even just cool, but not like the league that everyone feels like they need to bash, to me, that's a metric. I'm into street cred. I don't really care about the external stuff. I'm into the street cred. As a coach, that's what I'm into. And that's how I kind of feel as a former player in the WNBA. There's no other professional women's league or athlete that gets bashed like the WNBA does. And I don't understand why it's been like that. Professional women's tennis players haven't been the brunt of all the jokes. Professional women's soccer hasn't been the brunt of all the jokes. It's been the WNBA, and that's been hurtful over the years. And I think Caitlin Clark and Paige Becker and some of these players are, they're really getting into the heart of America, and they're opening up people's minds to watching it. And I hope that we as a league, WNBA I'm talking about, are taking advantage of the new eyes that are on us to show what's been around a long time, which is a great product, a phenomenal group of very impressive women with incredible backstories, and it can start being respected.
And people are watching the WNBA in record numbers in the last couple of years. Jenny, it's your first time on the show. Carla, we've done a few episodes. Finances is always a topic of our show. So we'll give it to Carla. And Carla, you're obviously responsible for finances with our athletic department. Women's basketball has exploded in viewership over the last several years, collegiate and professional levels. The NCAA Women's Basketball Tournament TV deal is going to be refreshed. Yet Power Conference women's basketball teams, despite all that viewership, and the WNBA still operate in a deficit. So what will it take to make women's basketball profitable at the collegiate and or the professional level in the near or distant future?
Well, first, I think it's important to acknowledge that not all men's basketball programs operate in the black. So a lot of people may not recognize that, may not think about that, but it's definitely true. So we're fortunate our men's basketball program here either breaks even or operates in the black, So that's one thing that I think is important to acknowledge. And I think that once television and sponsorships are distributed equally or fairly, then we'll start to see more revenue flowing towards the women's sports. For instance, there are some systemic reasons why women's basketball does not have the revenue that's generated like the men. We just only recently started to get points and credit for postseason participation, even though the Final Four has been selling out for a very, very long time. Even though sponsorships were there for a very, very long time, women's basketball didn't get the same credit that men's basketball got through March Madness. So that's starting to change now, and I think that'll be a huge help in raising the profile and also making the sport more viable. For us here at UVA, there's a lot of upside. I think we saw it, the year that we had 13,000 people here for that Virginia Tech game. The largest crowd in the Commonwealth to ever watch a women's basketball game. That is an indication that people want to watch really good women's basketball. And so I feel like we're headed in that direction. I know the program this year, the roster, Coach Mox is really excited. It's a very, very talented roster, and we are going to be better. It'll be a fun brand of basketball to watch. So I think that having more programs outside of the normal blue bloods over the last 20 years that have been to the Final Four and Elite Eight and won national championships, having more teams experience success will only help spread the word, if you will, about women's basketball nationally.
We've seen professionally and collegiately, women's basketball players are incredibly marketable.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Including some that we have here.
Yeah, absolutely.
How has NIL affected the
Yeah.
collegiate female
Yeah.
athlete experience,
Yeah.
for better and also
Yeah.
for worse?
One of our most marketable student athletes at UVA, and we have 800 of them, is Kamora Johnson. And that's because she's a phenomenal player. She's an awesome person, and she loves being engaged in the community, so she's incredibly marketable. And we feel like that is going to continue to grow with the program. So there are NIL opportunities for women, and surprisingly, not to us, but to people externally, the Olympic sports do really, really well with NIL. And, 2 years ago, a year ago, our most profitable student athletes in an NIL space were our swimmers, women swimmers. And they did a phenomenal job. So I think that there are opportunities for women in this new era. The difference is the rev share. So the rev share right now, the majority of it goes to the revenue producing sports because that was the intent of the settlement, was to allow for the student athletes in the sport that generate the revenue to be able to share in the revenue. So everyone has an opportunity at the NIL deals. The revenue share right now is geared towards the revenue producing sports. So we'll have to see. Our industry is always changing. Like, it feels like daily. There's something changing about it. So I'm curious to see how that evolves over the next few years too.
Carla's got a complicated job
Yes.
in college athletics.
It's all you.
The NBA only changes a little bit each year, right?
Yeah.
Now, you guys are both mothers. Former UVA coach Joanne Boyle, when she was here, adopted a child while she was the head coach. Coach Mox recently had her second child this season. What are some challenges of being a mother in the sports industry, and have things improved over the course of your career or not?
Well, we were just talking about your daughter, so I'll let you start.
Yeah, again, I'm in a space, the WNBA is very, very accommodating. There's a lot of mothers playing who have played, are playing, a lot of coaches who are mothers, and it's normal there. I know I'm the only female coach in the NBA that is a mother. And so it's just a ongoing conversation. as when I had my daughter, and then as she's gotten older, as to what I can and can't do, what I need. And I've been very fortunate that all the organizations that I've worked for, and I give Rick Carlisle a ton of credit for this. He was like the first person I told, one of the first people I told that I was pregnant. I had just gotten in the NBA. He had been a huge advocate for me being in the NBA, and I thought I was going to disappoint him so terribly to say, I'm finally here like you wanted, like you said, but I'm probably done. He's like, why? Well, I'm pregnant. He's like, so what? And his answer just like kind of woke me up to like, well, if he thinks he's the head of the coach association, he's a legend. He said, you can do both. And I said, I can? And he has been a huge advocate for me being able to do both every step of the way. And so there are some accommodations. They're becoming less and less, but it's amazing how accommodating people are if you're clear on what you need and you communicate that, and you're obviously showing that you have value that makes it worth it to an organization.
Carla, how about your experience in the college level where it's a 24/7 job?
Yeah. I've said this before. I've been in college athletics for 40 years. So since I was a student athlete, and it's changed a lot. I was a student athlete, I was a coach and administrator now, and I would say even, our oldest daughter now will be 30 in October.
There's no way.
She'll be 30 in October, and I think back to when she was born and what the challenges were for me as a coach. I was coaching then, what the challenges were, and how, for me, I'm very intentional for our coaches who are mothers, because I understand how difficult it is. So I'm very, very intentional, very mindful of it. I ensure that our staff is very mindful of it, because you still have to do the work. So that's the thing about it. There's no pass. There's no exception. You still have to do the job, and you still have to be a mom. And, so for me, what I wanted to focus on was I wanted to advance in my career, represent well, and also be the best mom I could possibly be. And, we have that stress, that pressure to do that. And our counterparts do not, because there's a difference. There just is a difference. And so to me, for athletic directors, who several of the athletic directors are moms, several of our coaches are moms, head coaches are moms, you just have to create an environment where it's normalized. Mm-hmm. And I think anyone that knows me, any of our staff, they know that I adore babies and children. And I think that is very helpful and freeing for our staff members, coaches who are moms, because I understand.
And Jenny, Carla said she wants to get it to a position where it's normalized. In the NBA, is that anything that you're close to?
Well, I mean, it's very different because there aren't other mothers yet, but I do think when I first got in the NBA, which is now 9 years ago, you could tell that it was still operating that old school model of family over here, work over here, for the men too. And there was not much crossover in those two spaces of life. And older generations of men, I feel like that's what they were accustomed to, and that's their comfort zone, and they think it has to be that way. But younger generations of men, they want to be involved fathers and husbands, and their wives expect them to be involved and do some of the things, around the house and with the kids. And so it's been interesting to me, just even from like a father perspective, to see, because I had to have my daughter around. I mean, I was a single mother. They don't have a mother waiting at home. I'm the mother. She had to be around a lot. She is around a lot. She travels with the team a lot. She's she's just around. I think a lot of the old school guys, and there were a lot of them, I'm not going to name names, thought that was going to be distracting or a bad thing or just couldn't be helpful. It was going to take away from my work. And I think as they saw that it actually was a good thing for everybody, it didn't take away from my work at all. It's opened it up for the guys to have their kids around more and be more involved, and there be more crossover in the lives of their personal lives, their family lives, and their work lives. And now it is becoming more normal, I think, in the NBA, or at least the organizations I've been a part of, for the kids to be around and the wives to be around. And I think it's been a healthy, really positive thing for everybody.
And the players have a relationship
And the
with
players,
your daughter?
yeah, and they have their kids around, and so I think it's become a much healthier environment, and I think that the men are a lot more happier too.
And how old is your daughter?
She just turned 7.
And does she play basketball?
She's just starting to play everything.
Okay, I was
yeah.
going to say, well, you got a future recruit in about 13 years.
She's starting to play it all.
Last question for both of you. We've covered a lot of topics. You both are leaders in your field and will continue to do so until you retire. So when that day does come where you get out of coaching and you get out of administration, how do you want your time in what you've been doing remembered in advancing women's sports?
So first of all, when I get out of athletic administration, I already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a daycare, an academy for kids, to help push them to greatness. So already got my mind set on that. I think, as far as legacy, just someone who cared about student athletes, cared about staff, cared about coaches, cared about the industry as a whole. And I often, say I get to do this for 3 reasons. I love sports, I love education, and I love young people. So I feel like if I could do right by those 3 things, then I've been successful.
Yeah, I would say, right now we're in a place where my players still have to answer the question constantly what it's like to be coached by a woman. Like it's some crazy thing. I mean, imagine asking the players nowadays, what's it like to be coached by a black person?
Yeah.
Like they're getting asked this question. If you really reverse engineer the question, there's just so much, it's a loaded question. And our guys, like they're already, like they'll come to me like, why are we getting asked this? We don't even think about the fact that you're a woman. And so one of my measures of success would be for that to become how it is everywhere, because women in coaching, women coaching men, women in leadership position at high levels is becoming more normal, to the point where we're not having to do these interviews and ask these questions, because it's just something that, why wouldn't they? And of course they are, and the question will seem absurd if it gets asked. And then the other 2 things for me are similar to Carla. One of my favorite Maya Angelou quotes is, people are not going to remember what you did or even what you said, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And I would hope that everybody I've been in contact with, whether they like me or not, whether they think I should be there or not, I've made them feel in such a way where they respect women differently. They felt like they had a safe place, that they were cared about, not just preached to. And then I hope that I'm measured by how good a job I've done as a mother. If I do all this stuff professionally, but I haven't been a good mother, and my daughter ends up in therapy for 1,000,000 years and screwed up, then I have failed miserably.
I'll add to that, because I think it's a really cool example of exactly what you're saying. And I think that I think there is a generational difference in how women are perceived in the workforce now. And I often think about my son, who's 21 years old. He knows nothing else other than women being in leadership positions. Like it's not strange, it's not different. It's normal. He doesn't even think about it. It just is. Mm-hmm. And I think that generationally there are more and more young men who see it that way, and I think that's going to be better for the next generation. It's just normal. It's all he's ever seen. He's only seen women in leadership positions, either as a coach, as an administrator, and he celebrates that. It's like it's normal, not an anomaly.
That's what we're after.
Awesome. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for coming by. I know you got a tiny window of time here in Charlottesville. This was a great hour to spend
Oh,
with you.
thanks for having me. Yeah.
All right.
Always
Thank
good
you.
to share
Thank
the
you. Yeah,
platform with you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, thank you for coming back.
Yeah,
So.
my pleasure.
All right, Jenny Boucek, Carla Williams. I'm John Freeman. That's another episode of Inside Virginia Athletics with Carla Williams.